Now, in order to go over more of Scal, we need to actually load a calibration. So let's load our first calibration. So as I explained about the keyboard commands, we can do this by going to File, by using the F, L, and then we're actually just going to use this test board one which I've got. Now what actually happens here is it says how do you wish to access the file. Now basically the user ID is what is actually presented on the left. So we've got a generic user ID, okay, which is the normal version, and then we have a generic basic ID. Now these will be explained in a future video which will be labelled so it's very easy to see what they are, but basically the way to think about it is that with a basic you can have only certain calibrations viewable, and the normal generic OK is the full access to the ECU. So we're going to go to just generic OK at the moment to go over some of the areas of the Scal setup. Now that we've got a file in front of us, we can actually go over some of the items at the top because these are very important. So as I explained already, the ID is generic. The device is the ECU which the calibration is designed for, so this is for an S6. And in the X areas here, this will actually be when you're connected to the ECU, the firmware, the serial number of the actual device. The software version, now this is important. This is actually a software version 1.85, and that is designed for a firmware that's in the ECU of the S6 to be 1.85. If these two don't match, the actual calibration won't load into the ECU and will present an error, and this will be covered in the firmware update. But it's worthwhile mentioning now to actually monitor what your firmware version of the software is in correspondence to your ECU firmware version. In the top right, the offline state just basically states where the ECU is currently at. Obviously at the moment we're offline, but when you're connected to the ECU this will be green. If you're connected but there's a problem it will be yellow, and if you're offline it will be red. The S message area down in the bottom right here will display any errors in the state of the ECU, so it's also worth looking at those. The two boxes here on the corresponding right hand side will basically allow you to see the parameters. The default layout would have. Every time you go into a different area, these top parameters will always stay the same, but the bottom ones down here will change based on the area you're in. So at the moment you can see all of the fuel parameters are loaded because I was in the fuel area. If I go into ignition area, then all of the ignition parameters will be viewed. Okay.